everyone, and welcome to Dracast episode 5. Happy 2018 to you all. We've been trying to record this episode for quite a while and present our views and ideas of how to improve PvP within ESO. Part of the problem is that there are so many changes that we'd like to see, it's quite difficult to prioritise them all with a summary. So what we decided to do first is to focus only on non-combat and balance related changes, because those are often considered in a separate department at ZOS. In order to understand the reasoning for our changes, we first need to recap on the main issues that we're seeing within PvP in its current state. So when we think about that, the biggest problems in PvP today are mainly the feeling of stale gameplay and low map activity, greatly reduced server population gaps, and this was primarily due to performance issues, including the issue of players stacked up in one location and the impact that has on the server, leading to the population being reduced. The lack of faction loyalty and campaign-focused gameplay, and that also ties into objectives for different group sizes, and also the fact that there are no real meaningful rewards or incentives.
So yeah, to contrast all the issues that we arrived at, we've envisioned amongst ourselves some ideas that will help address them and define what we want to achieve by implementing these ideas. So, to summarize, in our minds, entering Cyrodiil should mean entering a fluid and dynamic open-world PvP experience where every engagement is unique. Our primary goals with the changes we're going to touch on throughout this podcast are incentivizing but not forcing faction loyalty, as well as revitalizing the importance of campaign scoring, aligning good fights with map play, and hopefully in doing so we want to create more passion and intensity within the gameplay. We want to create more ease of play, giving more meaningful rewards to participants and creating an environment that truly feels worthwhile to play in. We want to re-establish the objective distinctions between groups of different sizes and improving the strategic depth and strategy of the gameplay. And like is said, we want that to spread the fighting out across the map. And we also want to create more competitive parity, incentivizing more experienced players to more often compete against other experienced players. In order to encourage these changes, then what we need to do and what we need to see is more commitment to a particular direction. There needs to be a cohesive and uniform vision of how PvP should be, and in that way every subsequent balance or gameplay change can be measured directly against that and against that pre-established baseline. In doing this, we can avoid making changes that seem to contradict previous ones, which is a problem we've seen a lot in the past. So we've applied this standard of logic to our suggested changes, and whether or not ZOS do that, the fact is that a baseline does need to be established, whatever that may be, regardless of whether or not it aligns with what we're saying here, it needs to be done.
Yeah, so as Vile said, a lot of the changes that we saw in the past have been, in our eyes at least, fairly anti-group in their aim, and they've normally been suggested by players that play really only one or two particular playstyles within all the different playstyles that you can play within ESO. And it's been done without really considering the enjoyment and playstyle and other groups and things like that and what other people enjoy. It's normally suggested as a way to enhance just the gameplay that they enjoy. As a result of that, these changes hurt not only groups, which was kind of their aim, but all of the playstyles, because it reduced the variety of different roles. It limited the impact that one player could have on the outcome of a fight, whether that be completely solo or as part of a small team or even just within a larger group. So small groups received a lot of the worst of these changes. Helpful skills such as Rapids and Purge only now being available to larger groups that can spare a particular player for a dedicated role like that, and also ungrouped players can no longer benefit from the support of their faction. So we really wanted to try and think about how each of these changes would impact not just the gameplay that we enjoy, but every other gameplay within Cyro, because as we've said before, the only way that it can be a fun game for everyone and encourage high populations and everything like that is to really support every gameplay style. The way we want to present this to you is in the form of patch notes, because it's most commonly what the community is familiar with. So on screen, hopefully you'll see some patch notes going down as we go through our points, and there'll also be a separate document and forum post along with this too. So to start off with, under the Alliance War section, the first change that we wanted to make was pledging your account to a particular faction at the start of a campaign. So at the start of a campaign, you'll be selecting which alliance you want your account to fight for, and over the duration of that campaign, you'll still be able to enter Cyrodiil on other alliance characters, but you will not receive any reward for that other than just AP. This includes leaderboard ranks and rewards for the worthy. So the reason we wanted to do this was to motivate players to play for their faction, and it also feels that players will often swap to the winning faction to be rewarded partway through rather than staying loyal to their faction and giving a snowball effect. And we feel like that change of binding your account but still being able to enter other factions on different characters gives you the freedom to still play with your friends and earn AP, but reminds you that you need to be loyal to your faction in order to earn the big rewards.
Secondly, we want to add temporary rewards to the winning faction. So this is something that had been done in the past. During the period that the faction is winning, all the players pledged to that alliance will be eligible for a free CP and skill respec change, as well as have free transit time travel until the lead is lost. To earn this, the player must be tier 3 on the campaign. We strongly believe that the campaign results should make more worthwhile impact for your faction for at least the allocated period of their effect. And in doing this, we want to bring back a sense of faction pride without the previous necessity that was created by the faction buffs in the past. These are just some examples of potential buffs that we thought would be suitable to achieve this effect, but regardless of what the buffs would be, they should be, by nature, luxury, not necessity. The idea of giving free CP and skill respecs also lends to our philosophy of creating more ease of play, and making it easier to just jump into Cyrodiil if you're, say, a PvE player, and you don't want to have to respec your CP every time you jump in.
Yeah, the next change would be to change the campaign leaderboard to display the total amount of alliance points earned by an account for the faction, rather than each individual character. Because right now, it really hurts people who are playing multiple characters on the same faction on a campaign, because they, on each character, they don't get high enough up in the leaderboard to get like the really good rewards. So we want to encourage people playing different characters as long as they play for the same faction.
Onto campaigns themselves. So all standard campaigns would now be aligned on the same 30-day season or cycle. There will still be 4 campaigns, but these 4 campaigns will all start and end on exactly the same day and hour, creating an overarching campaign season. So the reason we want to do this is to lessen the sort of EMP flipping mechanics that go on at the start of campaigns. So where people just swap between the start of each campaign, try and flip EMP, and if they don't manage it, then they just give up and go on to the next one. Also with the 7-day campaigns, it's always difficult to balance sort of the rewards based on the participation on those campaigns. Whereas if they're all in the same season and cycle, it really means that people can go and sort of play on one campaign for that particular season and try and win the campaign that season. If they decide they want to swap or that they're not enjoying it, they can go to a less popular campaign, perhaps try and make a difference there instead.
So to reinforce these changes, we had the idea of adding a 7-day competitive campaign called Dovahkiin. Dovahkiin will be the only 7-day campaign of the cycle and will be open once every 6 weeks. Dovahkiin will cost a small fee of AP to enter, however the rewards for competing in this campaign will far exceed those of the standard campaigns. This will include items such as new Battle Master weapons that will buff PvP oriented skills so that as to primarily attract a PvP player base. This is one of the most significant changes that we're proposing, and by implementing this we want to establish a sense of competitive parity and create an environment where more experienced players will be drawn to, and that less experienced ones will aspire to be able to compete in. By only temporarily opening this, we want to surround it with a sense of hype and excitement, and we want this to be thought of as like a kind of final series to an otherwise open season. The intent of giving additional rewards for this campaign is to make it high risk, high reward by nature, so that it's highly attractive to players who feel that they'll be able to earn them.
Going forward towards the rewards, one change that we want to do is increase the highest available end of campaign reward tier from previously 3 to now 10. Reward tiers are reached after earning 50k, 100k, 200k, 500k, 1 million, 2 million, 4 million, 6 million, 8 million or 10 million alliance points within one campaign. And the reason we want to increase the amount of available tiers is because right now you can pretty much reach the highest reward tier within 1 day of gameplay, even if you're not very hardcore player, you can still reach it in like one casual day. And if you think about it, like in a 30-day campaign, this doesn't really motivate people to invest time. And since also the leaderboards and the rewards are now account-based, it will maybe motivate people to invest time into Cyrodiil to reach this higher reward tier. And just keep in mind that it won't be like you have to reach the highest tier. So 10 million alliance points per campaign is a pretty high value, and a lot of people won't reach this, but it will reward the people that actually are dedicated enough to invest the necessary time. And for the people that are not able to reach this highest tier, they will still get a better reward than they would get now probably. So it's rewarding no matter if you're a casual player or if you are like a very dedicated player. The second change regarding rewards is that we added a new type of AVA reward. So at the end of each day, players of the faction which earned the most campaign points on that day will earn a special end of day reward mail. To get this mail, you simply need to earn alliance points in your home campaign on that day. And if your faction wins this day, then you will get this mail, no matter like if you earned like 1 million alliance points that day or only 10. The idea for this is to motivate people to not give up because they are not gonna win. So even if your faction is maybe in last place on the campaign, you can still dedicate your guild, for example, to make an impact to the campaign, and you will get rewarded for this by potentially having a chance to win this end of day reward. Whereas currently there's often situations where after 2 weeks it just feels completely hopeless, and you see like your faction is on last place, and like you feel investing time is just wasted because you're not gonna win the campaign anyway. So this change should help this. This reward, since it's handed out every day, should be the main moneymaker of PvP. So you're gonna receive 5k gold and 25 tokens. We're gonna talk about the tokens and what you can buy for these tokens later.
Okay, so on to the seasonal type rewards. So certain campaign rewards would now only be available for your account during the next season of the campaign. So for example, if you had won a campaign and earned above tier 4, you might get campaign faction victor. So for example, Vivek Ebonheart victor. Or perhaps if you got to max tier and a faction win, you'd be able to use Vivek Ebonheart general. The other part, and as Sankt mentioned, end of campaign rewards will now be awarded with a new faction based token. So this will allow players to gradually save towards bigger ticket items, meaning that even if you didn't participate much in that campaign, but say your faction still did well and you still got sort of a reasonable amount of AP, you would get rewarded and you could build up over a series of campaigns to actually get a reward that you wanted, rather than, oh, you're just not in the top 2% this time, too bad you don't get a master weapon or something like that. You can actually earn over the course of a number of campaigns to achieve that. So onto what you can win. So we were thinking about it, and this is what we've come up with so far. There's obviously a lot more that you could add into this list, but if we consider it in terms of like reward tiers, so for example, the highest reward might require 10,000 tokens, and when you complete a campaign, you might be rewarded, say, between 500 and 5,000 tokens, just as a rough idea. So you might win, or might be able to buy a master weapon of your choice, potentially a house in Cyrodiil in the home base area, and that would have to come with certain rules and things like that, or perhaps even sort of a battleground themed house. Onto sort of higher tier rewards, but not the highest. So crafting packs for legendary upgrades. So we were considering 8 upgrades as a reasonable reward, so you'd be able to actually upgrade a particular item of your choice. A factional mount and costume. Housing guard NPCs that would potentially fight back in similar to the way NPCs would fight in Cyrodiil. So you could actually create small sort of keeps in your house and have people try and go in and take them, things like that. Also item tokens for things like undaunted helms and shoulders. So if you really wanted a particular piece, you'd be able to buy that piece that you are missing. Onto sort of middle tier rewards, different motifs and things that are currently available for AP. Maybe you could get those as well. Transmutation crystal geodes, so if you really needed to transmute an item, but you didn't have enough geodes, you could spend some of your tokens on those. A supplies crate, which contained a large amount of herbs and enchantment provisioning materials, enabling you to supply yourself for the next campaign. And then finally the lower tier rewards, so herb packs similar to Imperial City, Coldfire Siege, and also placeable flags similar to the Cherry Blossom or Mudball type idea, that you'd be able to sort of plant a flag in the ground as you wish to.
Moving on from those kind of rewards, moving on now to Rewards of the Worthy. First of all, Rewards of the Worthy will now scale based on your alliance rank. You'll now receive more gold in Rewards of the Worthy at rank 1, scaling from 100 gold at rank 1 to 1000 gold at rank 50. And you'll receive a higher chance to get rarer materials in your rewards, which will also scale, starting at 1% chance at Alliance rank 1 up to 10% chance at Alliance rank 50. Here we really wanted to add some longevity and meaning to the Alliance rank, as in reality when you're promoted you're in turn paid more, and we want to reflect this in game. Currently continuing to play on an AR rank 50 character means as little as playing on a rank 10 character, if not even less, because you don't get a sense of progression anymore, and this is something we want to change. In addition to this, Rewards of the Worthy will now contain a variety of pragmatic items, which are as follows. They'll contain a small amount of gold, a small amount of raw crafting materials such as ore, wood or leather, and as well as a chance at rare items such as tempest. They'll contain a small chance at uncracked transmutation geodes, as they currently do, as well as now a small chance at herbs and alchemy materials. Fundamentally, the changes we want to make are about creating more ease of play. We want it to be easier to just jump in and go, as we've said before. We feel that this is a critical element that other PvP games have, and it's something we want to bring to ESO. PvP in our minds should be more self-sustaining, and the reward bags should be more pragmatic in their nature, containing items that we need day to day for continued gameplay. Next up, we have rewards for players. Now, reaching Alliance rank 50 will grant you a new unique cosmetic items, including a new faction-themed mount, costume, and headpiece. Note that these costumes will be bound to your account, not your character, and they'll automatically vary in appearance dependent on the faction of the character you are playing. This bolsters our philosophy that reaching Grand Overlord should feel like a more worthwhile achievement and help make you a visually esteemed opponent on the battlefield.
So, moving on towards changes regarding map and scoring, let's first look at some population-based changes. The duration of each scoring evaluation will now depend on how populated the campaign is. Durations are ranging from 30 minutes to 5 minutes. We basically want to put more emphasis on times where the campaign is actually active. So playing during less populated times will still help your faction, but it won't be as impactful as right now. Because currently, if you think about it, you can get really many points by playing during off hours, especially on the European server, for example. If you play at 5 AM and you flip the whole map, you basically get 6 hours of complete map ownage and the points you get for it. And even if you're only playing with 20 people, whereas like if you play with 20 people during prime time, you would have much less impact. So it's not to punish people who are playing during off hours, it's simply to just, don't have the campaign be decided by who has more players during some off hours. For the duration, both the overall population as well as the ratio between the faction will be considered. So, like if there are 60 people playing on one faction, but no one is playing on the other factions, then the campaign scoring evaluation will be rather slow. If everyone's on medium, it will be, for example, slow. Like it will be faster than if all these people would be bunched on one faction. But likewise, if the campaign is locked, it will be much faster. So just to give out some numbers, if everyone is on low, the evaluation would be every 30 minutes. And even if one faction would be locked and the others are low, the evaluation would still be only once every 30 minutes, because during these times, like if you look at these populations, it's very unlikely for there actually to be any competition or any actual fights going on the map. So we don't feel like you should be rewarded many points during this time frame. If everyone is on medium, the campaign can already be considered somewhat active, so the evaluation would be every 20 minutes. And just going on from there, like the more people join, the faster it is. So if one faction goes to high, it would be every 15 minutes. And if everyone's on high, it would be every 10 minutes, one scoring evaluation. up to the point where at least 2 factions are locked and the third one is high. You would then get an evaluation every 5 minutes. A positive side effect about having faster evaluation timers is also that taking a keep might feel more impactful, because currently, if you take a keep in prime time, for example, it's very unlikely that you're gonna hold it for up to an hour, what you would currently need to hold it for to actually get any scoring for it. Because if you just take it and hold it for 10 minutes in the middle of 2 scoring evaluations, you're not gonna get any points for it, so your effort is completely wasted. But maybe if you can hold it for 15 minutes and the scoring would be evaluated every 5 minutes, then you would actually help your faction.
So on to the next change. NPCs will now be added to home keeps dynamically based on faction population. That will assist factions who are greatly outnumbered from just being easily pushed straight back to their gates. If you consider a scenario where each faction has a counter of about 300 points, bolstered NPCs would be worth 10 of those points, and players would be worth 2. So that would mean that in a full campaign, there would be 150 players on the map, and there would be 0 bolstered NPCs. But if a faction went down to just 20 players, the remaining keeps would contain 26 bolstered NPCs. That would be spread out amongst all the remaining home keeps of the faction. These NPCs would only respawn on each evaluation, so if they got killed off, then they wouldn't be instantly back, every time NPCs respawn. And the bolstered NPCs would not be affected by the rank difficulty increase system that we're going to talk about later.
Moving on now to the next section, we've also restructured the scoring values for all current objectives and also added systems that put more emphasis on the objective upgrade system so as to give it a more meaningful impact on the score. These changes will be as follows. Keeps will now have a base value of 5 points with an additional 2 points per upgrade level. Keeps can upgrade to a maximum of level 5, at which point its value will be worth 13, with the exception of enemy gatekeeps, which will not upgrade, so as to make these keeps of less permanent value to a faction. In addition to this, for each keep connected to the home base, a faction will receive a bonus point. Resources will no longer be worth points individually, however they will now add to the value of the connected keep. They will add a base value of 1 to the keep, and then an additional 1 for every level upgraded. The primary purpose of this change is to diminish the behaviour often seen when the 2 winning factions simply attempt to outscore each other by taking more of the weakest faction's objectives faster than their opponent can. This change should help alleviate that behaviour and mean that if you want to start outscoring the winning faction, you will have to start targeting the winning faction. Secondly, resource upgrade levels are applied on a faction basis and downgrade over time when held by an enemy faction. So for an example, Cyrodiil lumber will be at AD rank 5, like if it's been allowed time to upgrade to rank 5, and it will be at EP rank 1, DC rank 1. If EP takes this lumber mill, then the AD will begin to downgrade 1 rank every 5 minutes, and EP upgraded respectively. Next we have scrolls. Scrolls will now behave as a score multiplier rather than a flat score value. We really like this change because we believe that scrolls should be very powerful by nature and important to a faction. However, we want there to be a balance between prioritizing a scroll and the rest of a faction's tactical advantages. So, for example, if a faction is pushed back to 1 keep with an enemy scroll in it, then that scroll will not be worth very much compared to if a faction is able to hold both a captured enemy scroll and maintain a significant portion of territory. Our primary concern with this change is that it had the potential to increase the effect of nightcapping. However, we believe that the previously suggested change will help alleviate this issue and allow the added strategic depth of this suggestion to be worthwhile. Lastly, towns will now provide a factional buff where all your captured objectives upgrade 10% faster. This percentage will be additive, so if a faction owns all 3 towns, their resources will upgrade 30% faster. In doing this, we wanted to give towns a more strategic factional purpose, and in conjunction with the changes we have made to the upgrade system, we feel that this added strategy will be a great way for factions to coordinate, to take control rapidly and boost their score. We want these changes to add more level of depth to the strategy and the current map gameplay, and we want to start making good fights align with map fights and making playing the objectives feel truly worthwhile.
As Izanagi already mentioned, we're gonna Also want to do some changes about the strength of keep NPCs. So the effect of keep upgrades, first of all, becomes more noticeable for keeps that are close to your home base. So if you take a keep that is like really, really far away from your home base and you upgrade it to level 5, it won't be as strong as your very last scroll keep before your own scroll gates. And like second of all, we want to massively increase the strength of NPC guards all across Cyrodiil. Their strength will depend on the level of the respective objective. So of course, like on a level 5 resource or on a level 5 keep, the NPCs will be much stronger than a level 1 keep or resource. And the reason for this is to give outnumbered defenders a better chance to defend, because right now it often feels like as soon as the attackers breach the keep, it's pretty much over and you can't really defend very well, because the NPCs, like all they do maybe is like throw a negate and stuff, but they're more like an annoyance than an actual help in combat. And for everyone who played at launch days, back then the NPCs were actually a real threat, where like one mage NPC, for example, could actually kill a lot of people by putting down his ground AoE, and it was like an actual threat to even semi-organized groups. And we kind of want to get back to this level where like taking a keep isn't just about sieging it fast enough before any defenders can arrive, but also actually having a fight after breaching it, even if there's only a few defenders.
We've also dramatically overhauled all the mechanical aspects of the resources. So we've changed the effect that controlling a resource will have on a nearby keep. Our proposed changes are controlling the mine of a keep means that every 2 minutes an NPC spawns with a small group of NPCs to deliver stone repairs to the keep. Upon each successful delivery, the walls will repair by 50k. This NPC can be intercepted and killed by enemy players, as well as being protected and healed by friendly players. This NPC will be able to receive any friendly buffs from a group member would be, so that you can guard him, you can buff him with major protection, you can even buff him with major expedition. In addition to this, without the control of the mine, the surrounding quartermasters will not sell wall repair kits. Controlling the lumber mill controls the amount of siege a defending faction can have in the surrounding area. So with control, a faction can place up to 20 counter siege, as per it currently is. Without, they can only place up to 5. So sieges set up during the time of capture will remain until they naturally decay, and from there they can no longer be replaced. In addition to this, surrounding quartermasters will not sell wood-based sieged or wood repair kits. Controlling the farm of a keep will cause guards to respawn at a higher rate, and in addition to this, without control, the surrounding quartermasters will not sell forward camps. We want resources to have a more tactical effect on the capture of a connected keep. Ideally, a keep fight would encumber constant skirmishes, not only at the keep walls, but in the entire surrounding area. Ultimately, what we want to achieve by this is to better define the objective roles of different sized groups and give a variety of meaningful objectives to contest on the map. Fundamentally, to us, a successful keep capture should mean the tactical coordination of groups of all sizes. Large groups to siege and contest breaches and smash through on the flags, smaller ones to contest the surrounding objectives, and then solo players to harass enemies anywhere in between, preventing reinforcements and harass the enemy siege lines. Currently, it just means setting up 20 out of 20 siege at an empty keep, getting in and flipping flags before any defenders even arrive, and we really want to move away from this kind of gameplay. Now, that's not to say we don't want groups to push back to enemy keeps, because at times that's the kind of strategic gameplay we do want to encourage and spread fighting out across the map. But the issue is that at the moment, defenders don't have time to react to this. You can take a keep from within 2 minutes of when it's burst, and to put it simply, this is too easy.
Okay, so on to earning alliance points. I want to talk a bit about the tick system that's currently in game. We believe that the current behavior of offensive and defensive ticks is contributing directly to some of the problems and negative map gameplay within Cyrodiil. So, for example, if EP's Chalman has been under siege for an hour by DC, it will likely have amassed the entirety of the EP faction there, and also the entirety of the DC faction. The reason that they're there and that the fight lasts that long is that generally when DC have been pushed back from the keep, EP will not push out to go and clear the resource to go push them back to the gate, because they're all waiting for the tick. Equally, DC will keep coming back there over and over again despite having failed, because they want the offensive tick and hoping that it hasn't been handed out yet. If this gameplay is changed, and the ways that we will change it I'll come on to, it will mean that when a fight is over, the enemy will be pushed back out of the region, and the player population that is amassed there can spread out and take different objectives. The way we want to change these ticks are as follows. Defensive ticks will now be awarded for contributions made whilst at the keep. The AP will be held back, as the tick would normally be, until the keep is safe, but at that point it will be handed out to the players that contributed, regardless of their map location. So you can go push back to the resource, you can go to the gate. If you decide, it's a too big fight and you prefer smaller fights, you can go away and participate in some other fight, and if the keep is saved, you will receive that AP. This will also alleviate the problem of people just AFKing at a resource or at a keep and earning AP, as people would actually have to contribute in order to earn the tick. Offensive ticks will also change, and the AP will be awarded based on how difficult it was to take that keep, and also the intensity of the fighting there. So, for example, deaths, player numbers involved, that sort of thing. This will encourage people to take on difficult fights, rather than just running between undefended keeps in order to make a quick offensive tick flip. As a final change, we would also add a server specifically for dueling and GVG. There would be no buffs from scrolls, no EMP leaderboards or EMP flipping, and no AP gain. This would mean that the server could be used for these types of fights without buff servers being created where one faction is imbalanced by owning all the scrolls or having an HP buff. It might also be a good place for players to learn mechanics of Cyrodiil if their guilds wanted to do some training such as keep sieges, that sort of thing. Note that drops from IC would also have to be disabled so that IC could be used as an environment for competition, but you wouldn't be able to go farm Telvars and items there. The general purpose of this change is to keep the game fresh for players, being able to organise their own content whilst not adversely affecting other campaigns or causing tension within the community because they don't have a campaign to use. There are of course many more changes that we could talk to, for example extra Cyrodiil based events, that sort of thing, but we're getting more into sort of far future changes at that point, and we wanted to specifically focus on more realistic shorter-term goals to address the current problems within PvP. You will also notice that Battlegrounds, Imperial City and Housing PvP have not been covered here, but we do intend to cover them in a future episode. I think that kind of brings us to the end of the notes that we have so far, but for now I think if these changes were implemented, it would probably bring a lot of people back to the game. I would hope that it would increase the populations again, and that needs to be a thing based on performance as well. If these changes do encourage fights to spread out, and therefore performance can be increased, and populations can be increased, then it will just make Cyrodiil feel a lot more alive again. And that's really sort of the main thing that I guess everyone wants, regardless of your playstyle. So yeah, thank you everyone for listening. If you have any other comments, guys, before we end this, just go ahead now. Oh, go ahead.
It's important for some of these changes to not consider like only these changes, like look at them one by one, but just look at them in like the bigger picture, because some of them might seem like questionable on their own, but together with other changes they make sense. So before you go to the comments and say, oh my god, this change sucks, just think about the implications that this change might have.
Thanks guys, we really hope you enjoy some of our suggestions. Whether or not they align with your idea or your vision of Cyrodiil, I think we can all agree that something needs to change, and this is kind of some of the stuff we had in mind.
Thanks everyone, see you on the next episode.